Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. So by the time of this recording, the YCS Sacramento has already been concluded. It is the first YCS of the 2025 WCQ season, and it is the last ban list before our next Forbidden and Limited list. Konami already hinted at that and has already given the news that the list will be assured to come here in this month, and it will probably going to change a lot of decks in the format. So, as you guys already know, I am not known to be a ban list reaction or ban list prediction channel. I don't do this typically too often. However, this is a very extreme case because whatever happens on this next Forbidden Limited list is going to influence the game very heavily. And I believe that if we don't acknowledge like what could happen, this game is probably going to be a not great soul state in the forthcoming season. Rage of the Abyss has already been proven to be a monumental set that is going to bolster some strategies that are already too strong in the format. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So the first thing I want to talk about is the more common talked about cards. Like Dimension Shifter is on a lot of people's lists and radar. I think this is a hit that most likely could happen here in the TCG. I think the fact that it has already been hit in Master Duel and in OCG means that maybe a semi-limit could happen to this card, or even worse. That being said, I do think if Shifter does not get hit, we might need Called by the Grave at more copies. And this is a thought that has wrangled on my mind for a while now. Right now, the format is highly influenced by hand traps, and there are not many ways to stop it. That being said, I think if Called by the Grave actually does get a hit, like a change, something has to happen with talents, and something has to happen with Crossout Designator. These cards are very influential to the game. A lot of people have like built cards around commonly played cards in the format, and these cards are just very polarizing to the scenario that we have right now. As long as hand traps are popular in the format, Triple Tactic Talents is just going to be a very strong tool for combo decks, and I think the power behind Talents is a little bit more influential than the one from Called by the Grave. That's not to say Called by the Grave is not very powerful. It cannot decide games on its own. I've already seen games where Tempai Dragon just loses because Called by the Grave was like resolving on Heretic Spheres, just to give one example. So this is a very dicey topic. At first I thought that Called by needed more to be at more than one, but after thinking about Talents and Designator, this is a very iffy one. But I wouldn't be surprised if Konami does do a shift between these three cards. The next card I want to talk about is 1-for-1. So this card is not in a lot of people's ban list predictions and not on a lot of people's radars. And I think 1-for-1 needs a lot of attention because not only is it really good because of Snake Eye, it's also really good in other strategies. Like, just to give you an example, you can summon Fable Lure with this. You can summon Samsara D Lotus. The Yubel deck has been known for playing this card. After Rage of the Abyss comes out, I think Neptabyss is going to be the new Snake Eye Ash. So that's another card that can tutor it. I've seen a lot of games where people just win because the opponent just stops their known interactions and known extenders, and then 1-for-1 just jump scares them and summons just another extender to just finish off their plays. So I think this goes in tandem with original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye. I think Sinful Spoil Snake Eye is a lot more powerful than 1-for-1 due to its splashability being a Sinful Spoils card, and that as a Mina archetype coming in Rage of the Abyss, it's just going to make this card even more easily accessible. And just having a graveyard effect that can serve as follow-up or just another draw for Wanted just makes it even stronger than 1-for-1. But I felt like both these cards needed to mention because, again, a lot of people are having their eyes on this one, no pun intended, but not on 1-for-1. So, the another one I want to talk about, Biso Magnamon. So, Bestials have been incorporated into this metagame as a necessary evil. These cards are here just to like quell the Fiendsmith strategy, like in its tracks. However, I feel like Biso Magnamon has an incredible influence in the game compared to many other hand traps in the game, and that is due to its end phase effect. The fact that it can just add any other dragon just makes it very, very powerful. Like, one example I can give is adding Bestial Druid's Worm and summoning Druid's Worm. That already gives you 2 bodies on the board for like Closed Heaven into the Fiendsmith line. That gives you an instant rank 6, Beatrice. This gives you like a lot of plays that just are way too strong for some given decks that are already weak to Bestials. And that's not to mention other things that Magnamon can do. Magnamon can add Phantasme, which is a very strong card against like link-centric strategies that use IP, for example. It can add Genroku, which can kickstart your tempai plays during your opponent's end phase before you start your turn. That is incredibly influential for tempai dragons as well. There are other like decks, like for example Mimigold that can play this card, but I think Biso Magnamon is like one of the strongest hand traps we have in the game right now. I think if you do make this hit on Magnamon, you don't have to do any other hits to Bestials. A lot of people have brought up limiting Druid's Worm, and that is one that I do think that should realistically happen. But I think if you limit Druid's Worm and ban Magnamon, I think the Bestial engine is not going to be like something overthrown in too many people's decks, and should be a lot more easily to handle than in other formats. So Runeix, I think it comes to no surprise that Runeix are like the third like most influential deck in the format outside of Fiendsmith variants and Tempai Dragons. I think this deck is a definite rogue killer. There has been so many decks in the format that just don't do well because of Runeix, but Runeix is a necessary evil because it actually contests well against like the more meta decks. If the bigger meta decks like Tempai, Yubel, and Snake Eyes are hit, I think Runeix also deserves a hit, because if Runeix goes unscathed, it's just going to be that other thorn in the format that's just going to keep gatekeeping other decks in future formats to come. Like, and the biggest issue with Runeix right now is that it's a deck that influences degenerate strategies. A lot of people don't like floodgates in the game, and this is the best deck that can utilize a plethora of floodgates. Okay, so another card I have in the forbidden list, well, at least I think could realistically happen. Nemesis Flag. You're probably thinking, why not Protos? Why not Corridor? Why not Colossus? If you look at like Colossus and you look at Protos, like if you look at these cards, the card that makes all of this possible and makes it super easy to access is Nemesis Flag. And you can make the argument of just like banning Infernal Flame Banshee. I think Infernal Flame Banshee is not a problematic card at all. I do think Pyro decks are fine with having tutor cards like this and Bonfire. However, like just having an easy accessible engine that can get you a card that just kickstart your entire combo for like Nemesis plays is the real problem. I think Protoss is a problematic card, and the card does deserve like a substantial hit. But outside of Sword Soul, like there are no real strategies that really do have easy access to Protoss. And the thing about Protoss is with Apodracosis coming out in the OCG, like the Apodracosis archetype is going to be another archetype that's going to play Protoss, and I know Konami has that on like their list of ideas for the potential future. So I think Protoss is going to stay, but if you do want to hit the Nemesis engine, you should hit Nemesis Flag. Now let's go to the extra deck real quick. There are two cards specifically I want to talk about. The first one is World Sea Dragon Zelantis. This card is not in a lot of people's list either. I think that people have gotten to the part where they're tunnel visioned on how strong Snake Eye is without this card, that they just forgot that this card was a problem in the first place. And you can make the argument that only decks that can play Promethean Fire Princess can utilize this card. The problem is, if you do a good hit to Snake Eyes, but not fire decks in general, you will see Zelantis abuse in fire decks in the future. We're talking about Rescue Ace, Salamangreat, like even Tempai Dragons can do this, like without any issues. And I think another problem that with Zelantis that we have right now is the fact that you can choose whether to summon face up or face down the monsters that you summon with it. This bypasses a lot of monsters that just have like destruction protection, targeting protection. It just ignores a lot of like interactions and obstacles your opponent has with monsters in general. And yeah, I think Zelantis also really needs a hit. And the other thing that makes Zelantis really powerful is there is one other deck that can abuse Zelantis, and that deck is Ritual Beast. Like, Ritual Beast can cheat out this card really easily, and this being a Link 4 means that you can turn it into Zelantis, and we have Ritual Beast monsters that can just resummon Retiari. So just having a Link 4 monster that turns into another Link 4 monster for free and just keeps pushing plays against your opponent is just really, really powerful. I think if Konami does not do a really good hit, or they influence too much on Snake Eyes, like post like Light of Destruction and post Infinite Forbidden, Zelantis will find its way back into the format if it's not addressed. The other card I want to talk about, and this is a very dicey one, is Sangenpai Transcendent Dragon. If you have seen the OCG, Tempai Dragons is pretty much the second most contested deck in the format. There are so many things that makes that deck ridiculously powerful. I do agree with the Sengen cards like getting limited. Like a lot of people already have this like as their ban list like explanations, but I don't think this is enough for Tempai Dragons. I think Tempai Dragons are just going to be very, very strong, even with hits like Sengen Summoning and Pot of Prosperity, which is like another not really common talked about one. Like, if you limit Sengen Summoning and Pot of Prosperity and do no other hits, I think Tempai Dragons is still just going to be top 3 deck in the format. And I think the best hit you can do to Tempai without like murdering their engine or just like murdering like more consistency hits is Sangenpai. Sangenpai reminds me of one card that we've had in the format that just really was problematic for the game, and that card was Mystic Mine. So if you think about it in context, Sangenpai is a card that just ignores the battle phase entirely. Like your opponent cannot interact well into this card. The fact that you can summon this card under the summoning of Sangen Summoning and just have it be protected before the battle phase is also ridiculously strong. It puts your opponent in a very, very awkward position where they have to play in a very unorthodox way to just play around that. If this card hits the board, it's over for the game because it just means nothing else can interact with this. And you're probably thinking, hey, there are ways to play around this. Just summon like indestructible monsters, for example, or just summon like other stuff. The fact that this can change the battle position of the monsters upon summon also is kind of ignorant. And you're probably thinking, well, if Sangenpai leaves the game, then Tempais is just not that good of a strategy in the battle phase anymore. To some extent, you could be correct, but I think Tempais have enough tools in their system to just like really quill the battle phase to their favor. And there are cards that are very similar to Sangenpai. Like for example, Kaleidoshik, Magic Anti-Magic Arrows, Meteor Burst, and Ancient Gear Gaiden. These are like the biggest examples I can think of. But here's the problem. The problem is this is a main deck monster that is tied to a specific archetype. This is a non-searchable spell card. Meteor Burst is not as strong as Sangenpai because it only interacts with monsters and not with spell and traps. And this is very much tied to an archetype that has not been doing so well outside of that one feature match that we saw like in the North American WCQ. So if you take that into consideration, like this is like one of the better hits that I think could happen to Tempai Dragons. So there is one more honorable mention that I want to talk about, and this is number 40. You're probably thinking, well, Gimi Puppet has not done anything since its release in the TCG. It had like maybe one or two tops, and you are correct. However, this is just another strategy that it only takes one or two banlists to just do well afterwards. This deck actually is topping in the OCG, and the funny fact is, it's actually topping the OCG despite the limitation of number 40. So even after this deck got hit, this deck is actually being played and actually topping. The deck is a heavy hand trap format in the OCG, so you cannot say that it's because the OPC is catching themselves off guard. And there another mention that I have to bring up is that Gimi Puppet has other cards that are not released in the TCG yet. Like for example, this one, like the Fiendish Knight. After Fiendish Knight reaches the TCG, I think Gimi Puppet is going to be a way stronger deck. So, yeah. The main focus behind this video is talk about hits that are not in a lot of people's radar, a lot of people are not thinking about, because I saw a lot of banlist predictions. And even though Snake Eyes Jubel do have a very heavy merit on those decks getting hit, and you have problematic cards like Beatrice and like Appaloosa that also needs to get hit, I think some of these cards that I've mentioned also really needs to be focused on, or also be thought about. Remember, like in the TCG, Konami has done very good hits that we were not expecting. Like, we were not expecting a Baron de Fleur hit. We were not expecting a Savage Dragon hit. Just to give you an example, Link Kuribo was a more noticeable one. But again, this is a very unorthodox one as well. And this tells you that they know what's happening here in the TCG. And they know that this is just going to be a problem in the future. So yeah, that's it for me from me. I hope you found this video informative to your liking and understanding. More videos coming soon. Let's see what happens to the ban list. Yeah, keep practicing and keep dueling.